Hey guys, so this is going to be my first video into the whole journey of trying to be a full-time musician. So I did want to go ahead and start with this video because usually with starting off, I kind of find myself when I was younger and getting still in high school and kind of getting out of high school on about joining a band and trying to pursue your dream, and of course with just starting out with just guitar. And then, of course, trying to join a band. Here's some things that I kind of found myself running into. Not trying to bash on these people or their band or anything like that. This is just kind of the stuff that I've experienced with dealing, with trying to go ahead and pursue music with other people and other artists as well. So this was kind of what I find myself going into. So with the first thing I found myself doing was basically just, learning guitar, and you're starting to get good, and people are like, hey, you should join a band, you should do music, you're really good at it, and it kind of gets you motivated. You're like, yeah, I feel like I can do it. And so with this first band I'm going to go ahead and talk about, this one was from high school, of course. Of course, when I started guitar, I was 18 years old, and, I'm in the senior year and everything like that. So with this first band, it did start in high school. We only practiced like once or twice. Of course, I did start off with a couple of friends. My best friend at the time, he was the guitarist, and the other one was a bassist, and I was rhythm guitarist because my friend was pretty good. So and then of course we're looking for a drummer, and we really couldn't find anything, and eventually we found this one kid who did drums, but. I'll get to that in a second. So we got this band going, and of course the main problem with joining a band in high school was, of course, high schoolers. We tend to not have a lot of money. We can't really go back and forth, especially where I live. Kind of like a situation. It's not really like a bus you can get in. Of course, Uber didn't exist at the time. And so yeah, of course like being in high school, you don't have a lot of money, and of course if you're lucky, you have a car, or your parents give you a car. A lot of factors going into that. So we only practiced like once or twice, and also we did feel the chemistry in the air. And then of course the drummer of that band, he didn't have a drum set, of course. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people run into that with people who are really good drummers, but they don't have a drum set, or they don't bring it to practice. So whichever the case is. So he was like more of like on the music producing side. So he had like a drum pad that he played on. So everything was fine or so. So I didn't find a problem with it until we get out of high school, get a job, then we can get you a drum set, things like that. And so we get out of high school. I graduate that year. And of course, the drummer's kind of like not really talking to us anymore, and everyone's going off to college and everything. And the bassist of that band, the first one, he contacted me saying, "Hey, would you like to come over so we can jam?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." Like, we should really start a band again. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure about with the other guys as well." He's like, "No, I just want to start off with a new completely band, just you and me." I was like, "Okay, cool." So at that time, I started taking singing lessons. I actually started off with a Zen of Screaming for metal vocalists and stuff. This is before this is when I was starting to make covers and everything. And then so of course I start learning vocals. We should really make this band and everything like that. And I guess the few weeks later, he went off to college, out of state and stuff. And it kind of confused me. I was like, "Well, I thought you wanted to do music full time. This was your passion and everything." And he just kind of went off to college. I think we came up with a name. I totally forgot about it, and that was it. It was just kind of strange to me. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. All right, and for the second band, this was basically when I finally got a job getting out of high school, and I was 19 at the time. And so with this band, they were basically a cover band, and I just joined this website called bandmix.com. And for Bandmix, I find it to be a pretty good website if you are looking for musicians and everything. It's just, for my area, people People are not really like into that kind of thing. And of course, like I'm pretty sure with other states, you gotta find yourself traveling very far for other musicians, and you know how that kind of stuff goes. So I'm not. So with this cover band, they were basically just they were basically like kind of an older group. They were like in their 50s or so, and of course I'm like 19 years old at the time, and I kind of found it strange. But I'm like, you know what, music is music. I'm pretty sure some bands like have like older members and everything, you know, which is fine. That's totally cool. And then one thing that kind of put me off from them was, you know, we were talking, like, you know, it was like talking about like, what your interest is and, you know, things like that. Of course, I'm like music and I'm a guitar player. And then, of course, they were looking for a guitar player. And then with the songs they wanted to do, they wanted to do in popular songs like, you know, pop covers, the latest hits, and, you know, top of the Billboard charts, you know, things like that. And that's how they got popular, or that's how they made their money. And the drummer, I'm like, okay, I'm not completely against pop music. You know, some people are like, oh, I'm never going to play pop music, and, you know, things like that. But he didn't enjoy playing the music that he liked. He's like, I just want to play on my drums. I don't care what song is playing. And I'm like, well, you're not really happy doing what you want to do, and you're kind of just in it for the money. And for me, I'm like, you know, that's fine. I'm not really into that I'm not really into just doing covers, like just solely just covers, not really making any original music. And kind of ironic because I did find myself starting off with covers, and of course going into making original songs, and that's what this, you know, whole series is about. All right, and for the third band. And so for the third band, they were like, you know, high schooler kids, just graduated, and, you know, kind of like in the same process I'm in. They start off with like making like, you know, YouTube covers, or not even YouTube covers, just kind of recording themselves on their phones, or, you know, things like that. And so with this band, they had, you know, a lot of members, and they had like, you know, 3 other guitar players, a bassist, 2 vocalists, and, you know, of course, a drummer and everything. So, which was fine and everything. I wasn't, you know, like, it's a lot of members, but, you know, like, as long as we, you know, can practice, we're consistent with it, and also just, you know, being in a band and making music, and, you know, as long as you find the time for everyone, you know, to practice, or if so-and-so can't make it, then that's okay. We practice at this day or this time. You know, I was pretty much ready for it. And so I kind of find myself, they were talking, saying, oh, we should go practice. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And they're like, no, not you, but the other guitar player. I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, okay, so when are we all going to practice or so? And then they were just kind of like very, very, very unorganized with going to his house, that house. You know, it was just very unorganized with a lot of members, and it's kind of hard to keep track. And eventually I kept asking, hey, when are we gonna practice? What time, you know, and what day? And they just never really gave me a straight answer. And I was like, you know what? Forget it. So I decided to quit that band. The vocalist had like 2 jobs and and they were in college. So I was just kind of confused on how they had time to really be in a band, if that really is your passion. And, you know, anything's possible and everything like that. It's just, it was just very hard to follow along with what was going on with that band. And we were all in a group message and group chat and everything. And then they were saying, you know, we had big plans. We were going to play Warped Tour this summer. And I was kind of confused. I'm like, how are you guys going to go on Warped Tour when you guys are just starting out with covers? Like, you build, you know, your fan base, then you know, make your make your own original music, and then, you know, there's a whole process to that. You don't just go from walking to running, like, especially with that kind of big step there. I'm like, we don't have anything recorded, and they don't have, like, they basically didn't really have anything. All right, and for the fourth band. So for the fourth band, it was basically, I was like, hey, I keep meeting these people, and then I kind of just want to start off with people that I know, like my family and friends. I was like, hey, do you guys want to start a band? And also I saw this YouTube video with starting a band, and the guy was like, you know, make sure you start off with, like, you know, your friend, like, you start off with people that you know, like friends, family, things like that. And of course, you guys do have different styles. You can always blend those styles together and and then create your own sound out of it. And I was like, sounds like a good idea. So starting off with the band for this one with my family and friends. So of course I had my brother doing the drums because he said he always wanted to play the drums, prior to learning guitar. And my other friend, I taught him guitar, and of course, like, hey, I really want to learn how to play the bass. And so with that, I'm like, all right, cool. Then I can, since I already know how to play the guitar pretty well, and of course, like, I think he did singing, or if he wanted to be background singer, like, it was like kind of jumping back and forth. So with that one, we really didn't get anywhere with that because, for one, that wasn't their passion. They were not motivated to do it. They were more like into their other stuff and into their hobbies, and it just kind of feels like I'm forcing my hobbies on them, and more of like forcing them to do it rather than them wanting to do it. And of course, mixing the whole sound together, he's like, yeah, I like this style. I like this style of music. I like that style of music. My brother liked that kind of style of music, and usually I just kind of found us like not really blending the sounds together. It was just mainly like playing one song this style to playing the other song that style, and it was just kind of wasn't their thing. So I was like, all right, I can respect that. All right, and number 5. So number 5, the band that I joined was back, I think, last year. This band, so they lived like 30 minutes away, and for me, as of right now, I don't have a car. I didn't have a car at the time, and also I was taking Uber everywhere. So of course, like, taking Uber there and taking it back, it was like a $40 trip getting there and getting back and things like that. But with that band, I usually found myself with, of course, like the typical thing of, oh, the other members couldn't make it, and I was already on my way, and I was already on my way to the band rehearsal. I'm like, hey, is it okay if you and me just jam together? And he's like, all right, cool. So then I get there. The place I'm practicing at, it was like her parents' house, and they were pretty nice and everything. And also, then of course, like after like practicing one day, I was like, okay, this sounds good. Even in my I think even on my Instagram, I'm like jamming to them like every once in a while. Like there's probably like a couple of posts there. I'm not very sure. With that band, I kind of found that we did have one of the drummers, and one of the drummers didn't really show up. He only showed up once. The main person, like with the guitar player, she was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll just go find another drummer. I was like, okay, cool. And then of course I started noticing this weird kind of pattern of every time when she had like a new member or somebody auditioning for the band, they would always leave. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. Because usually when they're like, okay, it's either they don't like confrontation or they don't like the band or something else is bothering them about it. And so with that one, I like basically saying, okay, this person didn't show up, that person didn't show up. So we'll just keep looking, and we're gonna make this a band. And then we found like a bass player. For that bass player, they were making a lot of dumb decisions. Basically, start off with the bass. We invited the bass player, and when we invited the bass player, he was basically out of his mind. He especially with like musicians and stuff. I guess like with really popular ones, or at least ones that made it. They would start of course doing the whole like drug thing, or probably just being like just trying to be like a musician like way too hard, and start doing drugs trying to think he's cool or so. But he just it wasn't contributing to anything. He was just getting high all the time, and of course he didn't like me he didn't even like me. He was all about the guitar player, the other one that was like mainly singing and doing the lead guitar parts, and I was mainly just doing rhythm because she's like, I'm the lead guitarist, I need you to be rhythm. I'm like, okay, cool. Honestly, like it's really hard to do that, like especially with other, like, of course I'm not saying it's impossible, like, because, Jimi Hendrix did lead guitar and sung with it as well, but she just wasn't in sync with it and basically making any progress. She was just kind of stuck doing the same thing over and over again, which I'm all about making progress and everything, because like you don't just don't just start from the top when you're at the bottom. Like of course you build yourself up, you get better, and you start playing shows and things like that. So for the bass player, we of course ended up kicking him out. He actually ended up, like, I think, doing some kind of drug at her house or so. Then of course her parents, like, go ahead, like, leave or so, because you can get arrested for having illegal drugs and stuff. And then after all that, we were like, oh, that, like, that was pretty bad. We really got to be careful on who we audition. So of course, like, we were very careful. We were very cautious now. And then this is kind of when I started noticing why people in the past kept leaving. Because usually what she would do is she basically have a job at the time. She was basically teaching kids guitar at the like in her neighborhood or so, which should make it like a little bit kind of a little bit money, but it's not really much, like, to basically, like, buy gear or whatever. So she had like Gibson guitars, and she spent like at least $1,400 on one of like the signature models that she had, and she didn't have a good amp. She didn't even have recording gear. It was just guitar and like a little practice amp. And I was confused because I'm like, well, you spent all that money on just a guitar, when our band, like, she had like a broken drum set like in her garage or so. Like, I thought we were meant to fix on that, and you just kind of just go off and just buy a $1,400 guitar. I was just kind of confused. It just threw me off. And like before, and I was like, okay, maybe that was just kind of like a savings up thing that she was doing from day one of like playing guitars. Like, I'm gonna save up for this, and eventually bought it. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then she just kept modding her guitars. Like, she basically bought like a cheap Strat copy and put in like Seymour Duncans in it, and put in the Floyd Rose, like, all this weird stuff. And eventually I'm like, okay, well, if you're not really serious about making music, you're just serious about just the gear and decisions on the gear, and like what's the point if you're just trying to collect guitar to play a little bit, then that's it. And then of course she got like I would say like really angry about other members not showing up, and like, I really want this to be a band and everything, and just really like it was taking over her life almost, especially with spending that kind of money, like with $1,400, that you can go buy a car. You got other stuff to do instead of just music. And so she just kind of did that, and then we auditioned this other drummer, and for this other drummer, of course, he didn't have a drum set, and of course for me, I had like this little electronic drum set that I plugged into the amp or so, and I'm like, okay, this is the best I have, since you don't have a drum set and you're a drummer. It's like basically being an artist without any paintings or any pictures, or hell, even a paintbrush. So, and he's like, oh, I like acoustic drums better. I don't like electric drums. I'm like, I just spent all that time not disabling, but basically taking apart all the drum pieces and putting it back into an Uber car, and of course along with my amp and my guitar, and all the stuff with the drum set as well. And then of course on that night that I was going back home, I'm like, why am I doing this? Because I'm putting like basically all this effort, and I think we even recorded like a song with like the recording stuff that I have. We only recorded like a few of her parts really, but that was about it. And I ended up like just sending it to her, because I'm like, okay, here's your songs. Like, I didn't even mix or master it or anything. I just sent it out to her, and I found myself, I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm like, I'm bringing my computer, I'm bringing the drum set, I'm bringing, of course, my regular guitar gear, and I'm just constantly getting, I'm constantly just getting like this feeling of saying, why am I doing this? Like, she's not really putting anything towards it. It's just like she just keeps buying guitars and buying that, and not really trying to be better as a musician or even better as a guitar player itself. And it just kind of confused me, and eventually I just stopped being in that band. I just told her, hey, I don't want to be in this band anymore. I just kind of feel like our goals are not on the same page at all, and also with that, nobody really shows up. And she was kind of, and of course later found out she was actually just kind of being, mean to them, saying you're not like, you're not able to show up like one day, and she just gets like really mad about it. Oh, we're gonna look for another, drummer, we're gonna look for another bassist, like just kind of automatically replace them as soon as they said no, like the first time. So it was just crazy, and then eventually I just went ahead and quit that band because it just wasn't for me. Nobody was really showing up, and I didn't see it at first, but later on I did see it with this other band. All right, and for the sixth band. So for the sixth band, it was basically after that, after the fifth one, where they actually contacted me during that, like one of the rehearsals I had or one of the jam sessions I had with her, saying, "Hey, do you want to join this band? I saw your page on Bandmix." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I'm definitely interested in, seeing this band, and see how everything goes." And of course, with me not really wanting to be in the previous one, I was like, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and quit that one because we're not making any progress. Nothing's really getting done, and quite honestly, I just feel like it's time for me to move on. I'm not bashing on any of these bands or bashing on what they see to be more important and everything. It's just we had different views about stuff. So basically, they saw us on Bandmix, and the previous drummer, the first drummer, when I went into the fifth band, that was the same drummer, and he really has a habit of not showing up and just basically kind of wasting everybody's time. And of course, he lived out like further away than I did, and they didn't. And then of course, with this sixth band, we did not have a place to practice. Like we didn't go to so and so's house because they lived that so far away, and we didn't go to this one because for other reasons. And of course, you can't practice in my house because I'm, currently living in an apartment. So, so we ended up actually practicing at Guitar Center. And Guitar Center at the time that we were rehearsing, it was like $30 for like 2 hours. It was, the rates were crazy. And of course, they have a drum set in there all ready to go. They have a bass amp. They have a guitar amp. They even have a PA speaker where you can sing into. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I get to audition for this for the sixth one, and so we get there, and it was the same drummer that really didn't have a habit of showing up. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and give him the benefit of the doubt. He was, we were in that band. She was kind of being mean to other people, saying, "I'm gonna replace you as soon as possible." And I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna get, I'm pretty sure for him not to show up, that's pretty reasonable. So for this band, they weren't, as far as I know, they weren't like that. They were willing to work with you. They were, pretty calm about everything. And so I meet the bassist there and the lead guitarist for that band, and also the rhythm guitarist again. And then we had the drummer. And the drummer, he was really good. And I was kind of rusty on my practicing, and I was like, I'm not really feeling this. I just need to practice a little bit more. And of course, the bass is like, yeah, you should. And I'm like, okay. And then the drummer, he was like, then of course the bassist with the drummer on the sixth one, he was really impressed with his playing. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then of course, with that problem came the drummer didn't show up again. He basically just ignored us for a few days, and also with ignoring us, it was like such a hassle to get a hold of him. And we were like, okay, what kind of, because he's always saying that he's working and has other stuff to do. And I'm like, okay, what's so important? Not what's so important, but basically, what kind of jobs do you work? Do you work like 12 hours a day and only have this amount of time? We're just trying to figure it out. And he ended up working out a grocery store part-time. It's just like, I guess he just didn't find the time for it. So, and then eventually they're like, hey, we're going to look for another, it's like, hey, I know it's pretty hard for you to find time, and we're gonna go ahead and look for another drummer. And it just feels like it's such a bother to you to be in this band, even though you claim it to be your passion, that we're just gonna go and find another drummer. I'm like, okay, that's pretty reasonable, because he didn't want to show up. And then of course the other drummer that I did find from the previous band, he actually contacted me. He's like, hey, I just, hey, I know I actually left the previous band too, the fifth one, and I was just wanting to know if you just want to jam. I'm like, hey, I'm actually in the sixth band, and I can go ahead and get you in. We're actually looking for another drummer, and he's like, okay, cool. So we jam and stuff like that, and around this time, I was starting to get ready to move, and also getting ready to I had a lot of stuff going on. I'm like, hey, is it? And then of course with my job, I ended up like changing my schedule for a little bit, and it really put a toll on it because I couldn't get to band practice because I was like working like the night shift basically. And then after that, then I was like, hey, I'm still practicing the songs that we rehearsed, and I even wrote some lyrics to it. And then he's like, yeah, like, oh, that's fine and all, but we're gonna go ahead and let you go because basically, it's basically we kind of like we know that you're moving and everything, so like we don't want to put any more pressure on you. And I was kind of confused. I'm like, well, my thing is up until May, and honestly, it shouldn't be that hard. And eventually, they ended up letting me go, and so yeah, then that's where I'm kind of at as of right now. And basically, I'm just gonna go ahead and start off with making my own music by myself, at least like, single-handedly. But if I do end up joining a band, or if I do end up even jamming with other bands, they like, hey, let's collaborate and stuff. I'm totally down for it. It's just kind of this experience of joining a band, and what I experienced, and why I'm kind of going this direction.